Welcome to another video. This one is going to be about taking notes in game, and it can be as a coach, player, it can be during ranked, scrims, matches, after them, during them, etc. The reason for making this video is because if you learn how to take notes, you learn how to think, you learn how to structure your own thoughts, you learn how to talk when you think about your game, you learn how to remember your game, and you learn how to process information in game as well much better. So let's start with taking notes as a player during scrims or after scrims. During scrims might be really hard, so I'd say after scrims with a VOD, for example, is much better. Now, many would take notes of what, or here's how the process would go for most players when they watch VODs. They play a VOD and they just watch it as if they're watching a stream, and they press pause when they see something, and then it's usually like a mistake. They pause, they describe the mistake and what they could have done better, and that's it basically. Sometimes they wouldn't write, but let's say if they write, usually it's on the PC or in a digital form. And yeah, that's it basically. But a better way you can do it as a player, for example, is you watch the VOD, you watch it once without taking any notes, and then you rewatch it. And you write down the timestamps, and you want to look at things you do well, things that stick out from your own pattern or behavior, and then things you did bad. And you want to think of your own gameplay. You want to think of yourself in patterns basically, because you might not want to think this or want to think it, doesn't really matter, but most players, they have a certain pattern they play by. They play different styles and so on, and a player never plays in unique ways, or a player doesn't play in unique ways every time. Instead, they have different things they always do, or different positions they always take, or different mindsets, different words they use and so on. And it's worth taking a note and becoming aware of how you think, how you look at the game, and for example, how you scout. What's your tendency before fights? What's your tendency to do during fights, after fights, etc.? Do you feel like you might be panicking during fights? Well, then you have to look at what happens before a fight as well, and not only during the fight. Because panic and not only panic, but happiness, sadness, tilt, etc., it all sets in before you become aware of it. So I just want to underline how important it is to look at what you do well, and also think of yourself in patterns, and not only in mistakes or in good things. Taking timestamps is really important, so that you can go back to the VOD when something happened. And the last thing as well is to write it by hand on a piece of paper with a normal pencil or pen, because if you write it by hand, you can retain the information much easier, and you also will learn that you write less and less as better you get at writing, because you don't want to write as much as possible. You want to write only the essential stuff. You want to write the things you will remember the easiest way. And if you write an essay on a PC, each button press has an equal resistance, and you might get distracted. Someone might DM you or something. But when you write on a piece of paper with a pen or pencil, you stay focused on the writing part, and you stay focused on your thoughts. You learn how to reflect, and you look at things in a different way. It's a bit different when it comes to coaches and so on. When you're a coach and you're watching a scrim, you're not going to have time to write details about every fight or every mistake and so on. Instead, you want to write, or the way I do it, I take timestamps and then I make keywords. For example, if a player keeps being greedy and dying really early on in fights, I just write their name and then death pattern or something like that. And then I have my way of thinking, what does death pattern mean? And if a player does a good thing, I'll write the player's name, the ability or the thing they did good, and a plus. If it's really good, 2 pluses. If it's extremely good, then it's 3 pluses. If they did something bad, I do a minus. And you understand how I mean. And if it comes to the team or several persons, for example, if someone says something that's really weird, or it sounds really weird in my eyes, in my ears, I mean, or they say something really good, or seem anxious or stressed or whatever, I try to write their name and exactly what they write, what they say. And then you want to do that on a piece of paper as well, not on Word or anything else, because you will get distracted by doing it in a Word document rather than piece of paper, because if you spectate at the same time, for example, you're gonna have to tab out, tab in, and so on, and it's a real hassle. But yeah, that's for what taking notes during a scrim as a coach. If you then end the scrim and you want to talk with the players, since you wrote it with keywords, you can sort of remember what happened. But let's say that we try to write everything in detail. The problem with writing everything in detail is that you might take too much time to write something. You might get stressed, and you might not be able to process the information. You might not be able to follow the scrim, and a team fight might happen, and you might get delayed or whatever, you know. So if you then wanna talk with the players, you might feel that you forgot something, or you don't have the same idea of what you wrote down. Maybe you processed it and you have a different opinion now. So that's why I think it's really helpful to write keywords, and being very short when you write as a coach during scrims or during matches. Then when you talk with the players, you just bring up their name, what they did, and what the thought is behind it, and if it's a good thing, bad thing. I want to focus on positive reinforcement, and that means that you want to reward good behavior rather than punish bad behavior. And if you punish bad behavior, you might also remove good stuff they do, or you might suppress them, or you might make them feel less confident and so on. But by keeping up the positive reinforcement, you might make your players feel more empowered, more confident, and it also helps bring out the behaviors and attitudes, the actions, decisions, etc. that you want them to repeat. It's also really easy to remember the information when you're taking keywords like that. Then after scrims, as a coach, if you want to take VOD notes, for example, the best way for me is by watching the VOD, and then I write timestamps at the same time, like I would do in a normal scrim, like I do with these keywords. And it's something that I'm just used to, but other coaches might have different methods. You might have a different method. There's no right or wrong, but just I recommend taking timestamps and something that helps you remember why you took the timestamp. You watch through the VOD all at once, then you rewatch it, but you stop at every timestamp, and then you watch frame by frame. And if you watch frame by frame, you can really see every decision. You can see how a player looks. I mean, where they look, how they look like this, who do they look like at. If it's a diva talking to your Winston, for example, with when they want to do a dive, but the Winston is completely lost, like he's let's say the Winston is talk about let's dive, and he's looking somewhere else, like completely unrelated. You can then talk with the Winston about where he looks and why he looks there. You can ask, why is that on your mind? Like, is it distracting him, or is it something important, and so on. And you do that for every timestamp. You want to look frame by frame, and it's a really long process. But it really helps understanding decisions, it helps understand the game, and it helps thinking about what you think versus what a player might think, and it helps being able to analyze every side of the situation and not only your side. Because when we look at the VOD and then pause and then keep playing, we kind of take some information for granted. So you really want to make sure that you don't miss anything when you bring up the VOD later. So anyways, if you are at the timestamp, you write everything about that timestamp, then you move on to the next, and next, and next, and next, and next, and so on. Once you have everything written, you have gone through every timestamp, maybe you erased some because they weren't needed, then you go through your document and you remove the parts that you basically don't need. You put yourself in the position of a player and you try to listen to yourself, like, would I listen to this? Is this too much information for me? Is this too little information? Is this off topic? Is this actually worth something for me, or is it more meant to someone else? And the reason for doing that as well is because you might find that some information is more suitable for one-on-one, or it might be suitable for some other time when you don't really have time to go through something. It might be too much information in the sense that a player might get zoned out too early in the VOD session, or you might need a break there. All these things. You can figure it out by analyzing your own text after you've written it. It's sort of like making a draft. Then you edit the draft, and then you make a final draft, and then you publish whatever article, And that's it, basically. Not completely, but it's those are the methods I use when I take notes during scrims and I take notes during bots.